The following presentation is brought to you by the KMmedia.pro network. Each channel is created to provide highly engaging and fascinating content presented in an entertaining light just for you. Please visit www.kmmedia.pro for complete information. So now, stay right where you are as we present.
If you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. Nikola Tesla.
In Think Energy, Dana Parker and I, Kevin McDonald, will delve deep into the world of energy and vibration. We will present great guests who are able to use energy in a positive, healing way, be it NLP, Reiki, mediumship, energy healing, spirit communication, and many more modalities. Our intention is to create a safe place for all of us to understand that everything is just, well, energy. Of course, I made it, so I suppose I should. But it's really cool. We have got a unique situation today. We were Dana Parker and I were going to interview the modern sages, one of which is Jenn Gilbreth. Is that right?
Yes.
Perfect. And Candice Kunze is her partner in crime. And unfortunately, in this day of COVID, we have Candace, who is taking care of her son because her son has come down with COVID. And Dana is standing in a line right now for 3 hours waiting to take a COVID test because she doesn't feel well either. But the show must go on. So it's Jenn and I, and we're here to take your calls or to talk to you. We're not sure if some folks are going to come through and to show up, but if they do, that's great. If they don't, I get you all to myself. So that is really cool. How are you today?
You know, I'm doing really well. I'm excited to be here and just open to see whatever comes through and whatever comes forward.
Awesome. And tell us about, a little while ago, you held up a flower and you said that we need to talk about this flower. And it's a
Yes.
sunflower, isn't it?
Yes. So, so this is a backstory. Yesterday, I had a session. So, for those who don't know, I am a spirit medium, which means I have the ability to connect to loved ones who have passed on. And it's just always so fun and so unique to see, who comes forward. However, yesterday I had a session with a woman, and her great grandmother came forward, and she kept showing me these fake sunflowers. And I was like, I don't know why I keep seeing these fake sunflowers. And she was like, well, she never wanted fake flowers. It was always the real things. And at the end of our call, her grandmother shared a lot of healing messages. And at the end of our call, her grandmother said, okay, I'll be sending you flowers. And then she made a joke about them not being fake flowers, especially the sunflower. And this morning I was in my car. I was going to turn the corner right outside my front yard, and I saw this face down in the snow. So I was like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? I got to go pick it up. So I recorded myself going to pick it up, and lo and behold, it was a fake sunflower. And of course, with the snow, it's barely melting. And so I don't even know where this came from or how it got on my front yard. Obviously, Spirit has a bigger picture. And so I sent it to her, the video of me getting out of my car and picking it up. And I was like, I can't believe that this is this is what we're experiencing right now. It's just so funny how our ancestors and our loved ones find unique ways to talk to us. But it was also a confirmation for myself from her, that I'm in the right direction and moving forward in the right way.
You need to explain to me something.
Yes.
because I'm thinking to myself, I believe that that's the case. I've had my friend Kim Miller, her mother leaves her pennies everywhere,
Yes. Yeah.
and her mother's been gone like 10 years, and I just am I'm flabbergasted at the amount of planning that they did for that moment. Because when you think about it, somebody or something had to take that and put it there, and
Absolutely.
had to be at the time that you were going to go by and all of that. So they set it up and they put it together. But they do that all the time. But the is it because there's no time over there? They've got more time to work on it. Is how does it work that they can show us signs that to us are off the cuff at the moment, but for them it takes it's months of planning to get this together. How does that work?
That's a great question. Um, in my understanding and in my interpretation of this, it feels as though, um, of course, we know that on the other side, that time is not what it is here. As we come into this physical form, we have a lot of structure. I mean, our body is structure. Our spirit doesn't have this confined structure. It can be really big, it can be small, it can move, it can be very fluid in a lot of ways. And so, our purpose here in this physical world is we learn how to live in structure, but then we're also learning how to defy structure when it comes to manifestation or journey work or like us connecting into our true, authentic spirit self. And so I feel like having that understanding is that when our loved ones do send us signs, yes, it might have been things that were far back to make it happen, but I also think that things are a lot easier than what we comprehend it to be in the spirit realm. Is I have a lot of people who maybe have passed and they come forward and they're talking about what they're doing on the other side in terms of personal growth. And even just yesterday with this same woman, actually, no, yep, with the same woman, her great no, this was someone in the evening. Anyways, her great grandmother who had never come forward on her dad's side. It was a day of grandmothers, I guess. Um, she showed me like this big bird, like uh what is it? A parrot, and I like saw it like in the shadow on my wall, and so I said, "This is what I'm seeing." And this grandmother was very connected to birds. Like that gave her so much freedom and so much support, which is so cool because her niece that weekend, she went bird watching with her. And so it was like this connection in that space. Um, but she was also suggesting how when we connect into what our ancestors loved, we can find that support or that understanding or that connection as well. So it's just interesting to see how we might be guided to things or guided to a certain spot, even if we're not aware of it. But our spirit, our ancestors, guides are all connecting us. And when we follow that prompting, we're able to receive those validations and those spirit confirmations.
And we haven't had a chance to talk to you much about the evolution of your gifts, where they came from, how long you've had them, when you discovered them, when you figured out that I'm not nuts after all. Um,
That was
how,
a journey, I'll say that for sure.
so when did you first realize that you could sense things a little differently than other people?
That's a great question. Ever since I was little, I like to use the word, like, plagued with anxiety because I had anxiety to the next level. In my elementary school, I would always have massive headaches, and we talked about that in the last podcast, where I strongly believe that as we have gifts that are opening, we might receive more headaches because our third eye or our insight into spirit form is trying to open up. But when I was little, I would feel things a lot. So I would have a lot of headaches. I would feel things a lot in my body. I felt like I was constantly being watched. And as a little kid, it's really intimidating to try to understand and to move through in that space. But I will say I'm so grateful for my parents because when I would get my headaches, you can't have a kid taking ibuprofen 6 days a week.
No.
And so my mother started having me put a blindfold on, and then I would listen to a color meditation where it would guide me to my head or guide me to an imbalance in my body, and the light would heal and transform that heavy energy. And so at a young age, I was really taught to go within to find healing. And as I got older, I would fall back on that a lot. And I would start feeling people around, and I had so many friends who would come to me, um, and we would be doing something and some paranormal thing. I don't like to say the word paranormal, but some spirit thing would come up. Maybe they'd be banging on the wall or they'd hear footsteps and no one was home. It was always when they were around me, and they're like, "What is wrong with you? Like, are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, this is just part of regular life." And of course, it was intimidating at times. And after high school, as I grew up, I my brother actually has this gift as well. Right now, he's not really using it, but he gave me a message that came from my grandmother on my father's side, and everything he had said aligned perfectly with my life, and he didn't know any of that. And it was at that point that I was like, okay, this is something that I need to not just try to shut down, because I did grow up in a very Christian household. So I grew up LDS. And a lot of things when it comes to gifts of the spirit are like hushed. Don't do it. Don't talk about it. It isn't okay. And so there was this really big battle back and forth of like, I feel like I'm called to doing this, but yet my church leaders are telling me that I can't do this. And so it was this kind of this imbalance. But when my brother gave me that message, he also addressed how this gift has been passed down throughout generations. And some of them used it while others didn't. And so, really having that message come to me and then learning that I had direct communication with those ancestors, I could really see and understand why they used them and why they didn't use them, so they could help me stand in my power to use them or not to use them.
That's incredible. That's a really cool story too. And there's a reason why you had your parents as your parents, because they were
Absolutely.
understanding and so forth. But they also were part of a religious organization that, frown, to say the least, frowns
Yeah,
upon psychic gifts and stuff. And that's actually most religions do that. My mother was Lutheran,
absolutely.
and she believed that that was of the devil. and
Yeah.
and even meditation. I said, Mom, you should meditate. It would, because she was a little high strung, and I said, you should meditate.
It did you some good.
Yeah, you should meditate and calm down. She said, I can't do that. That's of the devil. And it's like, oh Christ. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean that. Sorry. um so it's a shame that and I'm so glad that it's changing now, because you're a young person, and you have got a long time ahead of you to be able to work your gift and to hone your gift and to bring forth a lot of to bring forth that sounds like a biblical statement, to bring forth a lot of real positive and understanding about stuff. and
Thank you.
and that's really cool.
Yeah.
And since you've opened up, without saying so, you were saying, so you had a reading yesterday afternoon, you had a reading last night, so you're actually working.
Yeah, it's been amazing. I'm so grateful I have a husband who is so supportive, and,
I don't think you had
he's
any choice.
yeah, he's had a lot of healing take place from connecting to his father who had passed, but he's very much so like, "This is what you need to do, so, like, don't worry about having to have another job, you just take this time to do whatever it is that you're called to in sharing these messages and healing." Because he's like, "That's one of my roles as your husband is to support you so you can do that." And so, I just feel so blessed, and everything really is referral based, so it's just, once you have share one message and people find healing, then they share it to others, and so it really is amazing just to see how when we surrender, spirit will help us to what our souls came here to experience, and it's so beautiful.
It really is. I have to tell you, I have been humbled the last couple 3 days, because people that I've talked to I've talked to them. In one case, I talked to her before, and this just happened yesterday. It was kind of interesting. I've been doing this for a while, and
Mhm.
I've been trying to get the word out about exactly what you're talking about, and it's been a struggle. It hasn't gone, and it's not like I've got 10 million hits a day and that kind of thing, but it's growing and it's
Yeah.
moving forward. But I keep on getting these affirmations from people. Like yesterday, I met a gal who is psychic, and she said, "You've got good energy. I think I'm going to like talking to you."
That's
And
perfect.
she said, I've done a lot of podcasts. Some are terrible, some are awful. And I think that you and I are going to do well and it'll be fun. And I agreed with that. And then right after that, I had another call with a gal who has been on my show before and does a lot of podcasts. And
Mhm.
she says, and I said, well, so how do I rate? And she said, no, there are lots of lousy podcasts out there, but you're one of the best at what you do. And I appreciate that because it's really,
Yeah.
it really is cool because I really feel drawn, and I am so glad that you made the decision because I wasn't going to force you into this doing this today. But I'm so glad that you made this decision. We've got her partner is Candace is out because her son has COVID. Dana, who's kind of my partner, is standing in line getting a COVID test, and
Yeah.
so we are the only two healthy ones left. But I'm
We
glad that
can
we
do it.
yeah, but I'm glad we had the opportunity or that we have the opportunity to do this because you are delightful. Did you know that?
Well, thank you. I'm really so grateful for that, and I would even, like, counter even with that space is that, yes, you do have such a heart about you, and I think that people are so drawn to you because you do have this voice that's very kind and compassionate, and yet you bring in humor, and I just feel like you have a good balance of all of those things, and so it's no wonder why everyone loves to come on your shows is because you are so well-grounded and you bring out the best in people, and even I feel that working with you too. It's so cool.
Well, it is so often awesome to have you here because we really try to get the word out about what's actually going on and that it's all about love and not fear and stuff. And so many people don't listen. And
Absolutely.
it's great for me to be able to share with someone like you and or in this case share specifically with you about how we can and not only that, I'm liable to abuse you by taking some of your time. I'll pay you for the readings, by the way. Uh,
Oh, you're great. No stress.
but it's you're really awesome. And I was kind of thinking that somebody may show up, but they may not. But that's perfectly okay.
Yeah,
It depends on, but somebody will see this and hear this later, and that's what somebody else told me today. She's coming on after us at noon on KKNW. Which, by the way, I forgot? Have you guys been on KKNW yet?
I don't know. No, we have not.
Okay, that's next. That
KKNW.
that's next on Friday at noon. We do a live broadcast on KKNW 1150 in Seattle, and
Oh, we did something on Monday. Was it Monday? We went on a radio show with you.
that may have been we may have been.
Was it on Friday? I don't know the dates.
I can't remember either, but Dana was there and you guys were there, and
Yeah.
we had a real good. Do you remember there being a board operator there by the name
Yes.
of Nathan?
Yep.
That was Nathan. That's a Friday.
Okay,
That's a,
then
that's
that's Friday. I know
that's
you
how I
have a
know what
million
Jason
things
is.
going on.
I know,
I
and
will
go ahead.
Oh, I no, go for it first. I was gonna address something, but if you have something to say.
No, not if you're going to address something. You're the kind that
Okay.
takes precedence over what I was about. No, I actually what I was just going to say was the gal that is going to be on at noon today said that she was thankful and she said that she's very proud to be part of the work that I'm doing because I'm changing a lot of people's lives.
Absolutely.
And I did that was kind of like really? Oh, isn't that nice? But and it will be, and there will be more,
Yeah.
and people are gonna they're gonna find this episode when you're 90, and they're going to go, gee whiz, she was good way back when. So I'm sorry.
Back in the
Anyway,
day.
exactly, back in the day.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you had an observation.
Yeah, so, as this flower is popping out to me again, I just feel like this is such a beautiful time to address. I know when I was on with you last time, we brought in your family, we brought in your mom and your dad as well, and his family, and I feel like a lot of times, especially when you lean more into energy and clearing, and a lot of people talk about, like doing your inner child work.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I also feel like there's a lot of people who have done that inner child work or who are very connected or aware of it. But I also feel like there's this space of connecting in with the ancestors. And we hear a lot about generational clearing and generational patterns. And sometimes we can hold on to negative emotions that are connected, or experiences that quite literally play out in our energy systems. But there's also positive gifts that come from our family lineage as well. And I feel like people don't touch upon that enough. Is we think we have to clear out everyone else's baggage so we can live our life, which yes, of course we do. And even in your space, if you don't mind me sharing, is like even in our other call, is it felt like your father and his father were very much so kind of like more structured, had things where they were supposed to be, where you kind of came in and like broke the shattered the glass of what was expected. And so in that concept, you really have done such a great job at clearing and changing the generational patterns of like having to live in the box. But there are also so many positive gifts that family, that lineage does bring behind them to bring it forward to be with you as well. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, it does.
And I think that the more that we spend time focusing on the negative contributions that our family has to offer, or that we were placed with, I feel like it can hold us back or kind of help us stay in this not even necessarily victim mentality, but this space of struggle or this space of stress. And I feel like there are so many people who do light work, who are healers, who do all kinds of things that can get stuck in this. I'm doing all my shadow work, I'm facing everything, but yet I still don't feel whole and complete. And I think that what we're missing is addressing the positive traits that do come down from generations. And I feel like that's so crucial. And for whatever reason, I'm like, we need to address that and talk about this because it can transform and heal so much energy, especially since 2020. Everyone's gone within. A lot of people have had to say, is this right? Does this right? Really changing patternings of the past to then create a new future. But if we don't have positive things to fill our future, we can just bring back those negative things. What do you think
I am
about that?
thoroughly impressed.
What are your
And
thoughts on that?
well, my first thought is I think you're absolutely dead right on. We receive gifts from our ancestors, basically and I'm different than my dad was. I'm different than my grandfather was, but there's a commonality there as well.
Yeah.
And the commonality is that have you heard of and you're a podcaster, and by the
Mhm.
way, shout out your podcast. The name of your podcast is,
The Modern Sages.
have you heard of the term podcast fade?
No, I have not.
Podcast fade is what happens to a podcaster that they get excited, right? You go buy the equipment. Well, you've done all this, but for them, those that are contemplating starting a podcast, they say, "Gee, what's a podcast?" So they look it up, and people are saying you can do this, and it's easy, and it's fun, and excuse me, and it's exciting for you to do, and so they get started. They have a subject matter they want to talk about or whatever, and they do a couple episodes, and their mother and their two friends download the podcast,
Mhm.
and then they get 10, and then they get 5, and then they get 8, and then over a period of time, and it takes a long time to put this together, to do it well, to do everything
Yeah.
that you need to do, and um, podcasters get burned out. And so they call that podcast fade because you get tired of it, you get burned out from it, and what my ancestors gave me, and there was a story in there, by the way, and my ancestors gave me. My grandfather was an incredibly hard worker. He did the traveling salesman thing the way they used to do it way
Mhm.
back when, where he would get into his big car with his samples, and he would leave and come back 6 weeks later, and he would go from small town to small town, and he'd go talk to everybody. And he was a very gregarious, upbeat, positive guy that would go and talk to people about selling shoes. And then my
Mm.
dad was very structured and was very, this is what I have to do, and this is what all he can do. So, but there was not any quit in either of them. And so, even though for the last couple of years things haven't always moved as quickly or as brightly as I'd like them to,
Right.
um, but I'm committed to this, and I'm not going to let it go. And that comes from their uh, work ethic and where they came from and that sort of thing. So when you're looking at your ancestors, that's exactly, I think you're exactly right, that we get things from them that become us, and we tend to look at the bad things, but we
Mhm.
don't look at the excitingly wonderful things that our ancestors oh, and my grandmother on
Mom's
um,
side?
my dad's side,
Dad's side.
and she was just an adorable lady. Everybody loved her, and so she brings that excitement and that same style to me as well. So I benefited from them, and that's why I think I was part of their lineage. That's it. A part of the
Yes,
lineage is because it was all pulled together, and now they're all sitting on the other side cheering me on.
absolutely. Yeah, I love that. It's you looking into that space and seeing, like, wow, this is exactly the positive traits that have come from it. And that's so beautiful, even that you've noticed that. And I was gonna say, it seems like even on your dad's side of the family, like you being connected and you being a people person, there might have been a experience where you let people in and they've wounded you emotionally and can be easy to want to just shut everybody out. But it's like, no, our greatest strengths are where we can be the most wounded. But when we're able to look at that and experience that and move forward, that's where our true magic lies, is in those things that we might not be wanting to look at ourselves yet, or people keep mirroring it for us to say, hey, look, this is where I'm really, maybe I've had a lot of wounds, but it's also my greatest strength if I allow it to be. And I feel like a lot of our ancestors, there's this call from the ancestors for us to look at that, because that's how we can let go and how we can let go of their things, their past, but move forward in a way that's healthy and authentic and like soul fulfilling for us here. And they want us to.
You are so good. You just described to a T, I might add, my biggest challenge in this life. And because of it, I get abused a
Mm,
lot. And people will and I've and it just recently happened again for like the
yeah,
7th or 8th time since I started, and it all has to do, it surrounds around this work and doing the radio and stuff, because people, it's like, he's on the radio. Wow, I could be on the radio too.
take
And
advantage.
and people take advantage of my good nature, and I get
Yeah,
told that all the time, because
absolutely.
but at the same time, I have to. That's it's I'm driven to I can't shut it down, and I can't say, "No, shut up, go away." That's
Yeah.
that's not so. Is that a good trait that they're mirroring to me, or they're saying, it's a good thing to be open, but you just need to be a little careful.
Yeah, it's the careful is because our ancestors all the time, if there's an imperfect everything's imperfect, but it's perfect at the same time because it's imperfect. But when there's a healthy, unhealthy
It's
balance in
perfectly
a
imperfect.
relationship. Yes, I love that. I feel like a lot of times our ancestors also wanna give us permission that if we need to set a boundary, there's an energetic connection between cutting someone out and putting up a boundary. A boundary is still having a connection, but it's saying, "Hey, I need for my own healing and for my own space, this is what I need." But cutting someone out is maybe when that there's that looming feeling, that looming resentment, that regret, that heaviness. And so it's like when we can figure out the why behind what's going on, we can set proper boundaries so we're not taken advantage of. But that's also part of your journey. Is I know for myself is where I am the most wounded is absolutely within spirituality. I've had some psychics that I've went to that have really caused a lot of trauma in my space. There's also been, growing up in that Christian tradition, there was a lot of wounding that took place there,
Of
and I
course.
noticed that when I'm struggling, the first thing that I wanna shut down is my spirituality. Is I'm like, "I'm not gonna meditate, I'm not gonna pray, I'm not gonna journal," and then I sit in bed and I'm, like, exhausted and tired and, like, lonely, and then I'm like, "Oh, no wonder I'm not feeding my spirituality," and then the second I start doing that again, I'm brought back to life. So it's like our greatest strengths are our greatest weaknesses, and our ancestors are calling us to look at that and say, "Okay, just because that's there, it doesn't mean it's bad or wrong." So going into your space is if you're aware of that, you can be aware of when that starts to show up, but you don't have to be fearful of it, but it's like walking cautiously instead of blindly in that area. And at some point that will back off or it'll fall away, but it's kind of like I love when I was working with Candace, she used the analogy of like maybe this imperfection or this stress or this worry is like, let's say it's someone in the back seat while you're driving and it's someone in the back seat with you. And at some point, they might be an annoyance and it might keep showing up. But at some point, when you're aware of them constantly in the back seat, all of a sudden you're going to look back and realize that they roll out of the door somehow and they're no longer in your car. But when you're aware of it and not making it wrong, that's when we can embrace what this human experience really is about because we're not really that person. We're not really these experiences. We're having them, but we're so much bigger than this experience. And sometimes we forget that.
A lot of times we forget that because
Yeah,
we get stuck in our own little place. I gotta tell you a story because this is so true. This is so true.
I love it.
Um, I had been in doing KKNW and doing the radio show in 2003 and stuff, and I did it a lot. 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, and got a little bit of notoriety from it. And some folks, it really helped some people because of the people that I brought on. Well, I had to
Mhm.
give it up, and then a couple 3 years later, one of the gals that knew that I had done that said, I'm looking to start a production company, and I want to call it Seeds of Love Production. I want it to be a spiritual experience, and I would love for you to come and work with me on this. And I said, well, I'm driving a bus part time. I couldn't get full time hours. And so I was not making a great deal of money, and I could use the extra money a little bit. And so I started doing it for free and brought my own equipment and set it up and did some recordings and edited and all that, and I did a lot of that for free. And eventually I said, but I can't afford to do this anymore.
Yeah.
And I need to be paid at least what I would get if because at Metro, if you're part time, you can get more work if you work at it. And I said, if you cover that extra work piece, then I can continue to work with you. And we did that for about 3 or 4 months, and then she came to me and said, I'm sorry, my husband said I can't do that anymore, and we're not making any money. I don't know what she was expecting, but we weren't making any money right away. And I said, well, no problem. I'll just go back to by driving the bus, and but I'm not going to be able to be here nearly as much to work with you anymore. And she was like, well, can't you do what you used to do, which was work for free? And I said,
Mm.
well, I have to, I have a son at home, and I have to make sure that he gets enough to eat. He's an athlete and is in high school and
Yeah.
stuff. So I can't do that as much. And she said, okay, fine. About 2 months later, I get a knock at my door, and it's her husband serving me with uh, a uh, um, lawsuit for $50,000 because I had left her work and stuff. So, and then that took 2 years. And she sued me, and she sued her business associate, and it took 2 years for us to get that done. It was dismissed because there was no foundation to it, but she was as vindictive as a person as you'll ever see, and
Wow.
and so there is, and I, I've had 3 or 4 people say, "Here, sign this," and I said, "What do you mean?" I'm you need to sign this because I want this from this show," and it's like, well, no, wait a minute, I'm funding it, I signed the contract, I'm creating it, and you want a piece of it, and stuff, and it had done nothing, and stuff. So
Yeah.
that it's a repeating pattern with me. How you pick that out, I don't know. Well, maybe it's because you're a
Mm.
psychic and you're good. Um,
Well, and I think that's also where going into your dad's side is, as your grandfather was a salesman, right? He would go and sell things, as he also had to stand his ground. And so knowing that you have a lineage behind you of people who have had to set boundaries and have had to honor that to be successful, that doesn't make you bad or wrong, and it's not taking away your character from what you have experienced, but seeing how we're a lot more connected than we think, but we're still individual. We're still who we are, and who they are doesn't have to define us. But it's almost like there's extra strength, or they also help give you extra strength to also help you say, you've learned this now. Here are some warning signs to maybe look for, and even setting up like saying, "Hey, I really wanna know, like, if this is a red flag, maybe I'll feel a burning in my chest, and only you can set up what that will be." But it's almost like if there is a warning, or if there is a connection that they wanna bring forward, you can set that intention with them just like that flower, and it can show up for you maybe in a sense of warning of like, "Hey, back off from this person," or maybe saying, "Yeah, this is a good thing to do." But it's like, when we know that we're spirit and we have that innate connection, like, we're here in this physical realm, viewing life, experiencing stories and trauma and everything. But when we step back into that spirit self, we remember, okay, I'm more than this, but I have that innate connection, and I can know what's good or what's not good for me. I can know what are proper boundaries and what are not proper boundaries, because I am that connection. I am divine. I am that spirit. But it's like when we give ourselves permission, or even signs within ourselves, like, this person, I need to not do this. I feel this burning, almost like maybe I feel like acid reflux in my throat or in my heart. I just feel this burning, and I just know this person's not for me. When we give ourselves permission to set, oh, this is interesting. When we set intention to connect with our ancestors, we can receive guidance, but we can also receive that within ourselves to have confirmation too, because we're spiritual and physical. And I think this goes back to the beginning question. You're like, how do they send us signs? Is like, well, we're spiritual, but we're also physical. And a lot of times we might be experiencing things going on in our mind, and yet we might not fully agree with it or fully understand or implement it because there's no physical evidence of that. And so I feel like we can have that physical evidence, but it's setting the intention in the proper way for it to happen.
exactly. Now, in many ways, this is how I also feel about it, because it would be, I have got more than ample evidence that people are not necessarily who they say they are,
Mhm.
and that when you cross them, they can turn into the Wicked Witch of the East, and but at the same time, I refuse to let that dictate who I'll work with or not work with, because
Absolutely.
ultimately I don't know. As an example, if I couldn't do what I do, if I was to pick and choose who I would be willing to work with or not. So my stance is, yeah, come on, let's go do some work, and maybe we can help some people.
I love it.
And and I then allow it to. I have allowed it to play out to where it doesn't serve me anymore, or there's been a problem with it in some manner or form. But now I'm learning. You know what it is, Jen. I'll tell you. You haven't met her yet, my executive producer, her name is Holly, and
Hmm.
she's a really, really, really sweet lady, tough as nails. She will, and so she this has just recently happened again, and she senses that there's a pattern with it, so she took steps to help me frame it in a way to where I can deal with it in a positive way, and but still get what I need to protect myself and my company.
Mm,
So
that's beautiful.
yeah, so it's all kind of, and if I believe, don't correct me if I'm wrong, but this has been my experience, is I believe that if we put it out there and we allow things to just evolve with it, they will work with us to give us the tools that we need to battle whatever the situation is that we find ourselves in. Do you agree with that?
I absolutely agree with that. And it's harder to trust. It's, like, easier said than done at times, especially when you're in the thick of something. It's like, "Well, I just wanna be in a different position. Why is it taking so long? It's not working out." But, yeah, we are supported, and sometimes timing is might not be what we want in life, but it might be what's to bring things to a better perspective in the long run, which we all know that, but it's kind of that that same concept there.
Well, I think that we know it and then we don't.
Yeah.
You
We're
you know,
here and then we're here. We're kind of back and forth in this remembrance of of the ebb and flow of this human experience.
oh, exactly. And um, I have to tell you another story if you don't mind.
Oh, absolutely, I love it.
And since we are here, I have to tell you the story of when I did the radio show in 2003. What happened was there were a bunch of synchronicities that lined up for me to be able to do the show. One was I was doing 2 nights a week on KLAY, and my boss found out about it, and he said, "You're going to have to quit doing the radio if you're going to be a district sales manager for me." And I said, "Well, all right." And then the company got bought by U.S. Food Service. It was Alliant Food Service. They got bought by U.S. Food Service, and they were going to let a bunch of people go. And this is at the same time that KKNW, which was a news station format, flipped their format into a all broadcasting format at the same time, so that I could quit my job, get unemployment, go to work with the radio station, and it was all seamlessly done. It was like it
That's
was all set
so
up to play.
perfect. Yeah.
And so I did that for 10 months, and I wasn't entirely successful getting enough money, had to give it up. But what it and I had to, and the last day of the show, I was able to say to the audience, I'm going to have to terminate Positive Talk Radio because I've run out of money and stuff. It's a little embarrassing, but it's expensive, and
Yeah.
calls started coming in, and people, "I can't believe you're leaving." People I'd never heard of. I had no idea who these people were, and they
Wow.
were they were calling in, and one lady called in and said, "My name is Linda. I live on Bainbridge Island, and I just want you to know what you mean to us." And I said, "Us?" She said, "Yes, I'm an Alzheimer's caregiver, and she and I sit here every day and listen to you, and she loves your laugh." And she says, "Oh, there he goes again."
Got chills.
And we are
Wow.
we are gonna so miss our time together with you every day. And it was at that moment, Jen, at that moment, I said, "This is my life's work. This
Wow.
is what I have to do. I have to figure out a way to do it." Well, so at that point, I had run out of money. My wife had run out on and was having an affair. So so that this was the start of my bad country music song. I lost my house, lost my dog, my dad died, my wife divorced me, um, I had to declare bankruptcy. I hit a bridge with a truck, and
Wow.
and I got sued for $50,000, all within this in the space of like 3 years. And then, remarkably, again, Spirit stepped in. The gal that I started doing radio with, her name is Kim Miller. She's a psychic medium. Calls me up out of the blue. I'm unemployed. I'm over 50. Nobody wants an old, tired sales guy. I couldn't get a job. And she calls up and says, my partner is a supervisor with King County Metro. And she mentioned to me
Wow.
that you ought to go to work maybe at King County Metro. And so I applied, and I didn't get accepted right away because I had been self-employed for 3 years and running my own company, and they wanted references from your previous employer.
Mhm.
I didn't have one of those. And so it sat there for about 4 months until Julie's her name, the supervisor, called human resources and said, "This is a really good dude. He would be a really good driver. And could you please make an exception?" And so she stepped in on my behalf. And so
Wow.
um, they had me turn in some tax returns and to prove that I was self-employed. And I showed them how much money I'd lost. I lost like $80,000 to do this thing, and to do the radio show. And so I went to work at King County Metro, and I went part-time, then I went full-time and was there for 12 years. And then a year before I left, I decided that I wanted to resurrect Positive Talk Radio, and because podcasting now was a thing. I
Yeah.
could go and I could podcast, and it wasn't gonna cost. You know how much I was spending to be doing the radio in 2003? I
How
was
much?
spending $200 an hour, and I was doing 10
Wow.
hours a week. It was costing me $2,000 a week to do the show. I thought I could make it up in advertising. Couldn't do it.
Oh
And
my gosh.
so
Wow.
in 50 weeks, you can imagine, if you do the math, if you do the math, 50
Quite a
weeks,
bit.
that's almost $100,000. And so my wife didn't think that was very funny. And so that's why one of the reasons why she sought to go elsewhere. So anyway, I went to work for King County Metro, and then I started the podcast again because I could. And I put up
Yeah.
old episodes, started listening to them again, and said, these are actually pretty good. And so I've got Neil Donald Walsh from 2003 and Gary Zukoff and a bunch of other really spiritual, exciting people that some are gone, some are still working at it. And so I started the podcast, and it started to grow. And then
Wow.
it started to do really pretty well. And so I started doing live podcasts and invite guests and stuff. And it takes a while, as you know, being a
It does
podcaster, it
take a
takes a while
while.
to get it going. And then I was invited to host a radio show on KKNW on Sundays, once a month. And because she said that she liked my voice enough that she said he could read
You do have a
the
really good voice.
she said she could read he could read the yellow pages if I'd listen to him. And so who knew? And so I did that, and then was still driving, and then it started to catch, and I started to say, I need to do this more. I want to be able to do this full time. Sadly, I said that aloud. Be careful of what you wish for,
Yes. Words are
because then
power.
exactly, because then, and this is crazy, because then what happened was, my son and I were out and about, and there's this 55 plus mobile home community that one of the other drivers lives at. So I said, well, we'll just stop in and see. And so we did, and it happened, coincidence, there was a real estate agent there. So
Mhm.
she showed us one of the places, and it wasn't what I wanted. And on the way back to the office, she stopped at a place that she didn't even represent. That's where I live today. She stopped in and said, let's go in and look at this one. I looked at it, loved it, wanted it. It was, because it was a little older, they couldn't finance it, so it was really cheap. I was able to pay cash.
Wow.
Cut my monthly bills in half and was able to move in here. So as I was moving in here, there are steps out front, and the steps were like 7 inches, 7 inches, 7 inches, 8 inches. So I tripped over the 8-inch one, fell,
Oh,
and tore my rotator cuff,
yeah.
and I couldn't work after that. I had to have surgery to repair that, and then just to make things fun and interesting, 2 months later, I was babysitting my son's brand new 8-week-old Labrador puppy, who
Mm.
I tripped over him, fell, and tore the tricep tendon in my other arm, and had to have that surgically repaired. And so I could no longer go back to driving a bus. Darn the luck. And
Wow.
so from that point on, I've been doing this full time, and I believe now you are connected. I've told this story a number of times. You're connected. Would you tell me, was that divinely planned? Did they set all this up for this to happen this way?
It's so interesting that you say that because it's almost like we see how there's so many things that had to play out for you to bring you to this purpose. And, as painful as it is, I would say that there is a soul contract for you that was like, "Hey, I'm gonna come here and I'm gonna be a voice and to give people permission to be open to new things." As your whole life story is probably panned out, is that you've always been someone to bring new ideas to people. Even probably in elementary school, you were like, "But what about this teacher? This doesn't make sense." Like, viewing things separate. Am I right about that?
Uh-huh.
And in that same space, it's like, even though we have those hardships, is like, yes, absolutely, that was devastating, and it's like, why did I have to go through all of that? But at the same time, it's almost like I feel like there was definite divine guidance in your space to help honor that, to put you in this position as to where you're at now. And it goes back to, like, so I would say yes, absolutely. And but I also feel like it's not that you're just like like that we're just victims in whatever's gonna happen to us. We don't have a say in it because we do. But I also think that our souls come here to experience certain lessons. And it's so interesting because in this physical world, we really rely on having connection to other people. A lot of times it's like we put value in ourselves when others put value in us. And we don't do things because others don't approve of it. And it's like we're taught to really go outside of ourselves for answers. But a lot of times when we come here and we're living our soul's contracts and we're learning all these things, it's going to be lessons that we have to face on our own. And literally no one can face it for us. But it's so counterproductive of what we're taught in this physical realm, and yet the biggest lessons we learn are soul lessons that literally no one can fix for us but us. Even with past relationships, like, as you were saying, there was a lot of things going on within the marriage, and even in that space, like, you having to heal yourself in a lot of ways. You couldn't have someone else do that healing for you. It was about you having to do it yourself. And I think that spirit provides us with opportunities for us to go within and to really say, what is this soul lesson that I'm learning? And why is it showing up? And then moving forward in that perspective. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. You're right on, because I'll tell you in hindsight, because when my wife left, our
Mhm.
friends left as well,
Mm.
because we were all married couples,
Yeah.
and so they chose her. And because I was doing this really weird radio thing, and why was he? And so they all chose her. So it cleared the deck of everyone except my two
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah.
But what that allowed me to do was to reestablish who I am independently of anyone else, and allows me to meet people like you and Candace and Dana and Holly, and most of them are women, and Eric, and and all these wonderful souls who
Yeah.
that I've had the opportunity without anybody telling me, no, you can't do that.
And how powerful that that is something that your soul came here to experience, and yet there was major wounding that took place. And it could be easy to fall back and say, "I can't do that," like, even with breaking both areas. I can't remember what like, the wording, but even for driving the bus is like, "I can't catch a break. What is going on here?" And, of course, you probably felt that way, and then you picked yourself back up and have moved forward and look and see that now. But I just feel like I was going somewhere and I forgot. Okay, I went and saw I don't know if you we went to the movies just recently, and there's the football show that's out. Is it Overdone? Do you go to the movies at all?
Not since COVID, no.
Yeah.
And plus I don't like to go to the movies by myself because it's like, "Oh, there's a guy who's by himself. It's a poor man. He doesn't have any friends." Anyway, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, it's the football movie. There's a new football movie that came out, and I can't remember the name of it, but he, like, received so much trial after trial after trial before he actually was able to play, major football. And it's just such a great example of like when we keep going and we don't stop and we give ourselves permission to say, "Hey, I need to regroup. I might need to set up boundaries. I need to reflect and move forward." Like there's so much power, but we came here for a purpose. And if we're feeling numb or we're feeling dead or inside or things aren't working out, maybe there's a pivot we need to make, or maybe there's something there that's not playing out the way that it should be. And that's okay. And once we're honest with ourselves in that space, we can really move forward. And I myself see that happening all of the time. As much as I love doing spiritual work, I can also be very depleted or very wounded. And so I think it's like being aware of that, like even in your space, being aware of that. And you're divinely guided. You're supposed to be here. You're doing what you're supposed to, but it's like putting that intention forth and then making it happen. It's the same concept of looking at the positive things our ancestors bring for us versus just the negative. It's finding that balance, that duality within life, which is what we came here to experience.
Oh, that's it, and by the way, you tied that up in a pretty little bow all at the same that was really that was really cool the way you did that. But no, you're right, because everything that has happened and the way I feel about it today is that I could not be here today if I was not the sum total of everything that happened to me up until this point. Because I learned so much, about human nature and about stuff, and it's vital that I went through that. And the fact is that I love doing what I did in 2003 so much, but now I love it even more. And it's
Ah,
now
it's
getting to the
beautiful.
it's getting to the point where I get to talk to people like you who are beautiful human souls.
Thank
And
you.
your mission in life is to help get the word out about spirit and about spirituality, and to help people recognize that their body is not who they are, and that their ancestors are very much alive and very much part of their lives. And even yeah, I believe in reincarnation, but I also believe that our souls and other souls, some of us stays up on the other side, and so they can have duality. They can be here and also
Yeah.
be watching us from there. Do you believe that?
I believe that. Yeah. I believe in the concept of like I don't know, I kinda like to look at it simply as like an orange peel, where in an orange, there are separate slices, right?
Right.
But ultimately, there's the peel holding it all together, and I kind of view it like our higher self, our higher soul is this orange peel, and maybe there's multiple lives going on. Maybe you're eating one peel and then or you're eating one slice and then you wanna eat another, or maybe you're indulging in both at the same time, like I just feel like there's so much more than we don't understand, but there is our higher self, there is a higher consciousness, and I believe that our ancestors can connect into that higher consciousness and help us receive information from this lifetime or maybe past lifetimes or maybe future lifetimes. It's, like, so diversitized, it's, like, hard to even conceptualize it all, but I believe exactly what you're saying, yeah.
So I make it for me. I make it as simple, because I'm a simple guy, as simple as I can, and that is I have got an amazing number of people on the other side that are all working diligently to make all of this happen.
Absolutely.
It's like today, as an example. This has been a fascinating discussion. I'm having a good time. I hope
I
you are.
agree. I agree. Me too.
And it also is by divine plan
Absolutely.
that Candace couldn't do it. Dana's probably still standing in line,
Yeah.
waiting for the COVID test. And you're well, and we are here, and nobody else is bothering us at this moment. But this show is going to be very impactful for people down the road because it shows a lot of humanity
Well,
and
thank you.
and who we are and who you are and what you're capable of doing and it's really great, and you've got such a lovely warm smile about you that and this peace. Are you really that peaceful in the inside?
I go through waves, absolutely. But when I center, I feel that inside a lot. Yeah. But I'm
And
human, and so I always go through a lot of experiences but I do try to create a good environment for myself. Like I listen to really calming music most of the time. I don't really watch a lot of intense, scary shows because I feel that energetically impact my system. And so I really have tried to set a foundation of like, I know this is what helps me feel peace and what helps me fulfill my purpose. And yes, there's sacrifice in that as well, but it's worth it. But I am human and I do experience all kinds of things, We all are. I'm
we
not always
do.
peaceful.
And there are days when I'm like Eeyore, you know, "Oh god, woe is me, life is terrible," and
Yeah,
stuff, but, what centers me, it's really weird. What centers me is this,
me too.
being on the radio or having a discussion with somebody on a podcast
It's
or something
beautiful.
like that. It really centers me and makes me feel complete.
I almost feel like that's also a symbol is like for people who might feel stuck or not aware of like what they're looking for, but lurking for something is just like you said, it brings you peace. It brings you revival. You might be having a bad day and then you come on and you're like, I'm connected again. And everyone has their own things. Like I love, love, love the movie Soul from Disney. I just so good. But when they're in the flow, like he's playing the piano and he's like in his own realm, he's connected to his spirit, he's connected to his higher self. And yet he can still become more present in life because he gives himself permission to be in the flow. And how often do we disconnect from that and not give ourselves that permission and then feel depressed, alone, heavy, insecure, like just disconnected and disoriented from life? It's like, no, we got to get back into the flow of whatever it is that brings us that space and make that an effort and give ourselves permission to do it because we need that.
I call it trust.
Yeah.
We just have to relax and trust that ultimately, first of all, whatever happens here is inconsequential
Yeah.
because it's not to the grander, it's not to our grandest self.
Yeah.
It's not who we really are. But at the same time, if we trust that what is happening for us is a learning experience that we have chosen, and that we are gathering this experience because it will be beneficial to us down the way. There's no way that you can take it badly. It's like remember I was telling you that I fell and then I fell again and stuff. I was in the doctor's office and I had a sling on my arm. Right arm was in a sling. They wanted to put my left arm in a cast, and 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 uh and so they were trying to figure out how the hell are we going to do all this and get it to work. And so I was listening to the the nurse practitioner out in the hallway, and she was going, "Oh, that poor man, he's got all this, he's got this arm and then the other arm he can't move," and I was okay. It's like, this is rather funny, actually. How the hell are we going to do this? So
Like, how am I gonna do anything right now?
yeah, and I couldn't, and by the way, when your right arm becomes incapacitated. There are certain things that you do with your primary hand that you have to learn to do with your offhand that may not be all that easy to do.
I could imagine that. I'm even
So
just thinking about trying to put on makeup with one. I'd be like, "I'm not wearing makeup for the next while or anything because I literally don't know how to use my left hand very well at all."
exactly, and if you as an example, personal hygiene becomes an issue.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
You know, and I don't have a little Asian lady that lives with me that can to handle such never mind. But so but that's all part of life,
Yes.
but so at the end of the day, what happened was because of the disability, because I have arthritis, and I'm now on disability, and because I moved into the house that I moved into, I now can live comfortably and not have to worry about money and
It's
not have to
beautiful.
work. And that is the lesson that I learned from 2003, where I was spending $2,000 a week and bringing in $300 or $400 a week, and it was deficit spending to a great degree, and it was very, very stressful. And I had a family, and da 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 da. Now, I don't have a family there. My kids are grown. My wife, well, who knows? And but I'm perfectly content. I'm perfectly happy. I make enough money to live. And so what allows me to do is to do this out of the goodness of my heart without having to worry about making a living at it or charging a lot
Yeah.
of people. And I mean, I don't make any money at this. I've been do this, 6 or 7 or 8 podcasts a week, and that's okay with me. I'm happy.
Yeah. That's beautiful. You're such an inspiration in that space is surrender, trust, and move forward. I love it.
That's
So
it.
good. Yeah.
That's it. And if you trust and you know that I know that ultimately the universe has my back regardless.
Yes.
I may not see it that way because somebody wants to sue me or
Yeah.
but by the way, they're now because of that we're putting up boundaries about having contracts for certain aspects of it so that can't happen again. So there are
Yeah.
things that happen to us and they happen to you as well. They happen to all of us.
Right.
So it's a beautiful experience, this life. And I should ask you.
Yeah.
I have my brother-in-law in 2003. I was talking to somebody who was talking about the value of life. And my brother-in-law, his wife died. She had a congenital heart defect. And she died in December. And he ended up committing suicide the following spring when he was
Wow.
42, because he got so stressed because of all the things. His job wasn't going well. A girl was that he had hooked up with, well, that wasn't working out. Then he got a bill for $500,000 from the University of Washington Hospital for where she was in ICU for a long time and stuff. So he ended up taking his own life. And I was just thinking, I feel so sorry that he did that because he wasted he was having a bad moment. But now I think back, because we were the same age, I think back 25 years later, 24 years later, he missed so much opportunities for growth and expansion and experience. I feel really sorry when somebody takes their own life these days. So I wanted to ask you, does his name was Bruce,
Bruce.
or his wife Sandy? Now Sandy was the smarter of the two, bec- but
Yeah.
this goes back 15, 18 years, so he should be out of Hawk by now, I hope.
Yeah. Yeah, let me just connect in for a minute here. Um, and just kind of see. I have my pen and paper that I'm just kind of like drawing in and just kind of connecting in that space.
Everybody that I know that's really, really good does that.
It kind of helps get your left brain, like your mental aspect, like something to think about, so that on the right side, spirit can connect in. And I always draw this like portal opening. It's just a thing on every paper before I do any session. It's like I have to have this portal opening, and then yeah, it's interesting how you kind of find the flow. But I do feel like even before you mentioned Bruce.
Yes. Bruce.
Um, I saw when you're talking about Sandy, it just feels like the first thing I saw is I like feel like my door opened, like in my mind, I could see my door open. And I saw this lady coming in with like a picnic basket that was like a wicker picnic basket. And I like see her like show me like she brings me into this field and it's like I see her place this a blanket down and I just see her like intentionally putting out this picnic, and then I see like people coming in and sitting with her and being with her, and I feel like it's a lot of one-on-one interaction where I feel like that's like she cared so deeply for people. It didn't always come across that way. She could have her own sassy times, but I see her really like taking on this pride and like this space of like getting to know people's experiences on the other side. And it's almost like I see her as like how people come to therapy here in the physical world. It's like I see her helping people work through their journey, or if they're stuck in some way, like I see her like welcoming them in a very feminine flow and like helping people work through maybe some regret that they still hold on to they experienced here. But I just see her like bring it in and it's just like very much so all about connection, but always someone who people look towards for understanding. Even if she didn't know what the heck she was going to say, she would say something and it'd work out. And I see her like also addressing making the best kinds of drinks, like always having some kind of drink for people to have or different stuff like that. I feel like she's very connected into that space. Does that resonate with you? Do you get what I'm saying there?
Oh, sure. Sure. And then you're right. Sandy could be she could be a firecracker. But
She
she
put
but she
people in
also
her place though when it was necessary.
but she had a really good heart.
Yeah.
And that well, she had a really good soul. Her
Yeah.
heart didn't work. That's what ended up killing her. But no, she was. And while you were talking about that's the weirdest thing.
Could you see it?
I could.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And are you does that happen to you a lot? People say, "Hey, I see that."
Yeah. I try to have it where it's like sharing these things and bringing in this confirmation, but I always try to open up the channel where if they're open, it can be broadcasted into their side, into their mind. It almost feels like imagination. It's like you're imagining it in your mind, but that's how ancestors speak to us. That's how we can connect to spirit is through that imagination that children are so open to. Well, it's not imagination, it's your third eye. It's your insight to see.
And was in your frame of reference, was she dressed? Was she wearing a dress?
Yes, and it was, like, kind of like one that kind of went out a little bit, like, a little bit more
I
not, like,
almost
tight fitting, kinda, like, old-fashioned it felt.
old style,
Yep.
a long dress with poofy arms and shoulders, and maybe she was wearing a hat.
Uh-huh, yeah, very almost, like, very tea party, like, proper, like,
I-
very dainty, but she's not all dainty, she's got sass and spice, but to bring people in was very, like, comforting.
what I was seeing was people standing around her, and she was inviting them into her space to sit and to have a beverage and to have something to eat, and then they would chat.
Uh-huh, yeah.
God, you're good. How did you do that and put that in my mind?
You're gifted, you have that ability, we all do. And I love to just when someone's open to just try to broadcast it into their space so that they can experience it. Because in reality, this connection isn't just me. You have it as well. We all have these connections. It's innately who we are, but we just sometimes don't trust or we forget. And sometimes it's easier for some than others, but if we both work at it, we can all receive that. And so I feel like we also need to bring Bruce in too. I can see him like kind of standing in the corner, like Like, I, like, see him, like, leaning up against a tree, just, like, waiting for his turn.
Well, the good. Whoops.
So, connection-wise, he was your brother?
Brother-in-law.
Brother-in-law, that's what it is, okay. Because there's something there. He's connecting into the tree. So let me just, like, sit with him for a minute with this. Okay, so I'm by the tree and I'm sitting there with him and I'm like, "Okay, what is it that you wanna bring forward or share?" And I just see him saying that you have been very connected and you've felt him in your space and you think about him often. Is it something that's there a lot? And it's not in a negative way, it's just like maybe even having conversations in your head like, "Hey, I hope that things are going well," like, kind of surrendering in that space, but for some reason, he keeps popping back up. But I see him coming up a lot in your mind, and it goes in waves where it'll be like it'll be gone for a while, then all of a sudden it's like, "Hey, what about him?" Like, I just see this wave of information. But I see him, like, leaning up against this tree, and then I see him, like, looking, he's like, just, like, watch what I can do." And so I see him, like, literally, like, climbing this tree, like, bare hands, bare feet, just, like, climbing, and I see him it's a hard battle, it's a lot of things to work through, but I see as he jumps from branch to branch and as he's able to use that strength, then he shows me and we're above on the top branch, and we're able to look out and see this beautiful scenery and to see things that he didn't see. And I see him relating that into a space. And as I ask him to just merge in to interpret it, I see him saying that in his life, he was stuck staring at the the bark of the tree. And instead of seeing the whole tree, it was like all he could see was this bark. And it was like, how am I supposed to make it up there if I can't even experience anything else but here? And then I see as he passed, it's like he was able to step back and to see, okay, this is the tree, this is the bark. And then he's able to rise above those circumstances and do hard things and push past his limiting beliefs to get him to that very high perspective of seeing the beauty. But I see him saying that that was his spirit's progression is like almost like he didn't feel like it was possible for him to step back and to see things in a bigger way. And when he passed, he was able to, even though he sees he could have in the physical form, but he was stuck. And so I just see him wanting to relate that he's been able to climb those trees, and I see him, like, kind of, like, flexing and, like, showing this inner strength that he's been able to reoccur and to accomplish, even though he knows there's been a lot of aftermath with the family who's dealt with his passing and the pain and all of that, and I just see him saying that at some point he'll be able to welcome each of them home and show them the tree and show them the strength that he's been able to occur and have them walk with him while he teaches them to climb or as they climb together, being able to heal and to address those empty holes that he left in people's lives. And I see him willing, open, and ready to take accountability for his part for people here. But if they're not ready or if there's still soul lingering things on the other side to help him, to help them heal. Does that make sense?
Yep. Absolutely. And my son sees him a lot. And he misses him terribly. And I think Bruce will be there for my son because my son is he's got a few issues, and especially with happiness in this life, feeling good about this life and stuff. And they think I'm just a terrible, hopeless romantic, but
Yeah, I see him saying that he's there to help people to try to see a bigger perspective. And of course, everyone has their journey, so spirit's not going to force us one way or another. But they're here to kind of open up the space so when our heart does open up to that, information can come flooding in to help us. And so I just see him promising that he is there to help your children. He's there to help those who are really seeking understanding, who are struggling with what he experienced. And he wants to help transmute it. But of course, we live in a world of agency. And so when people are open, confirmation, insight will come. but he's learned that he can't push his way into anything. He has to be welcomed in, but it's like he has this energy vortex around people so that when that time does come, when they are open, then things fall into place and help them align and remember their higher purpose as well.
I gotta ask you a question.
Yeah, go for it.
Because this just came up for me. When I was in Boy Scouts, we went on a 50-mile hike,
Uh-huh.
and the 50-mile hike was it was on the North Cascade Crest Trail, which goes from Vancouver, BC, all the way down to Mexico, and we picked a 50-mile area, and I was only like what 12, 13, and so it was like day 3, and we were going up a hill, and it was on the eastern side, so it was very of the mountains, so it was very dry, and it was brown, and nothing was really growing there, and the parents and the older folks were saying, are we getting close to the top? And the guy said, well, it's just around that bend. And we get to that bend, and it wasn't around that
It
bend.
wasn't there.
It wasn't there.
Like
And so
Pocahontas, just around the river bend.
that's it. And so
Over and over and over again.
everybody was getting really grumpy, and it was really a tough slog to get up the hill, and it seemed like it took forever, and it was dirty, and it was tiring, it was aggravating, and then suddenly, without really even expecting it, we get to the top, and the top is only about 25 feet wide. It's a pass. And as we get up to the top, we see nothing but evergreen trees forever. And it was beautiful. It was just, even me, I was 12 years old at the time. It was like, I didn't think that. So for me, that turned into a metaphor of life.
Wow.
And it was like, it can be tough, it can be a slog, it can be brown and dirty and everybody's upset, but there's going to be a point when you're going to break through that, and you're going to see the beauty that is in our lives and what we can create if we just trust and keep going.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's beautiful, and I think that's what Bruce is also relaying is his journey on the other side, coming to completion for his choices and for what it was that he experienced, but also taking ownership for a lot of things. That's part of the healing journey is taking ownership. It's once again that it's like that necessary evil, it feels like, of really only each individual person can learn those souls lessons. No one can learn it for you. And I see him just saying that he's been able to learn that and to complete that. And I also see him showing up a lot in your mind. And even within your son is his way of letting you know like that there is hope and there is healing, and he is a testament of that. Time and time again, like he's like, I am the biggest factor of like having hope, having transition, having change. And so I just see him really grateful and honored. And I see him like put this like back to the tree. I like see him like put like this wheat grass in his mouth.
I
Did
was
you
just
see
going to
that?
say that. Yes.
Yeah, I see him like put that in and then just like bring back in this liveliness and this authenticity of who he always wanted to be, even if he got stuck in the mental capacity that he couldn't do it. It's that tree. It's climbing that tree. It's doing those things that he was called to do but didn't feel qualified to. So I just see him like draw this big circle of completion, showing that his soul has learned a lot, and yet he looks forward to the time that he can meet and chat with those who knew him here and to help them find that completion within their journey as well. It's very beautiful.
I hope he's helping his mom and dad. They're both over there now, and they
And
anyway.
the last thing real quick with that is he's bringing in something about a bird. I can't tell if it's a hawk or an owl. It's a hawk. Has your son ever been drawn to hawks, or does he notice? You might not have even asked that question.
I don't know. I'll have to ask him. I'll have to
'Cause
ask him.
I feel like there's this connection of him watching over like a hawk, like bringing protection. But there's some connection with the hawk, but then I also see owl eyes. And so that's also symbolism of an owl can see in the dark, an owl can see things that we can't see. It can hear things that we can't. And so I see him there to help your son feel that as well.
I know exactly what happened, what that was about.
Okay.
And we were in a 3-bedroom apartment, and it was a second floor. And my son was home and I was home, and the crows were going crazy. Didn't know why the crows were going crazy, but they were just going crazy and crazy, crazy. And my son, who's he's smoking a cigarette on the deck, and he goes, "Oh my God." So I go out there, and there was a owl sitting on a branch looking at us with
Oh, interesting.
all these crows were around them going, "We want you out of here because you're after my baby," and stuff. And so they were,
Oh.
so it was, so I, that very well,
Was
since
it a brown owl?
yes,
Because he also has this brown, like this brown.
leather jacket.
Yes, yes.
It's a biker jacket.
Okay, yeah. He's like, "Talk about the brown," 'cause then I, like, see him, like, go like this, and
Oh
so
yes,
the brown jacket too.
it was his biker jacket that was brown, and he had a Harley Davidson. He had 2 of them, and he would get in that and get all dussied up
That would
and
make sense.
yeah, no, absolutely. No, you got
Yeah,
him. You got him.
yeah.
Well, tell him. Well, no, I
You
can
could
tell him.
tell him.
Well, and and we didn't get along all that well when he was here, but I miss him from the standpoint of when Sandy died, we as a family did not step up to help him. He went through a really tough time, and if I could just give everybody a message, is that don't let somebody whose wife has just passed and just treat it like it's normal. It's not. Everything is different for him, and he was still living in the same house. She wasn't there. She would come and visit him from the other side and stuff, but that freaked him out. Instead of being comforted, that freaked him out. So
Yeah,
he was doing more drugs and that kind of stuff. And then that's when everything just evolved into, and he felt he had no, at that time, he felt he had no hope. And there was nobody there and there's another story that I won't share, but um well, you know what is interesting about that is
mm,
that years before that, he and I were part of a group of a bunch of people that were looking to find a guy who said that he was suicidal on the 4th of July. His name was Danny, and we walked up on him and he took his own life.
wow.
So Bruce and I were there, witnessed a suicide, and yet still Bruce shot himself like this other guy did. It was interesting. So, but that's,
Yeah,
I've had quite an interesting, I look back at my life and it's like I've had quite a few interesting things happen over time,
yeah, absolutely.
and we all have. But
Yeah, absolutely.
but it's been a fun ride, and I'm and and giving what Candace told me last time, and I bought them the stuff that
Dandelion
she's
tea?
yes,
Oh,
and stuff
good.
like that. So I'm working on all that kind of stuff.
I love that. Yeah, that's perfect. I think that's really good to incorporate that in our life too, is our body is our greatest vessel.
Do you know that we've been spending an hour and a half talking?
I can't believe it. That went by so quickly.
It did, didn't it? And
Yeah.
you are. I just have to tell you, you are just delightful.
Well, thank you. I also feel like I need to hurry and just address that I don't wanna sound like I'm bashing where I came from religiously,
No,
because it brought in a very amazing perspective of my life, and I'm so grateful for where I grew up and the circumstances that I had to undergo, even within my gifts and in the church. And so I never want it to be like I'm bashing or I'm in a negative space. It's just, like you said, we have challenges. And now that I've been able to see outside of that, it's been a big blessing. Um, But I'm like, I gotta address that. I don't want it to feel like I'm like bashing something when that isn't the intention of it all.
No, and the reality is that you were destined to be who you are, but you couldn't be who you are without experiencing what happened in the past.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
and growing up but with your mom and dad being as open as they were and stuff like that, it
It's
it, it,
amazing.
worked, it worked out beautifully for you.
Absolutely.
How many siblings do you have? I know you have a brother.
I am the youngest of 5, so I have one older my I have the oldest brother, and then the rest are all sisters. So,
Poor
yeah.
guy.
I know, right? Yeah.
And of course, you see that's the thing in the LDS world. It's a matter of women get pregnant a lot.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and it's funny because I live a different path. My sisters got pregnant really soon after they've been married, and I got married later, and, I'm 27, so I still got a lot of time, but I
yep.
haven't jumped into that as quickly, and I feel like there's this purpose as to why is there's so many amazing things to experience still, and their lives have been amazing, their kids are so perfect for them, um, but it's just a different story for me, so my life looks a lot differently, and I think it's divinely guided in that space too, and hopefully in the next little while, I'll have some kids coming around, but it's just timing is everything and,
And
the universe and God's will has a plan.
Well, and it's like your mom and dad are going, "Now, why doesn't she get pregnant? What's going on there?" And 'cause everybody by now, because everybody else has kids, and
Yeah.
I learned that about the Mormons when I was in high school. We had a guy, but his name was Norm, and he went on his mission,
Mhm.
came back, and then they had a party for him, and it was at a pizza parlor. And so and I went there with some other friends, and he met this girl there, and we go, well, that's awfully nice. They got married 3 months later.
Yeah. Yep, things can evolve pretty quickly in that space.
Well, it was really was about, okay, he's done his mission, now he's come back, now it's time to get married and settle down. And
Yeah.
so, and the girl was, I don't know if they've ever met before, but they have now, and I assume they're still married all these years later. How happily, it's hard to say, but
Yeah.
but that's kind of the culture that you grew up in.
Mhm. Yeah.
So you're the
Yeah.
maverick of the family. You're 27, but you're married, so
Yeah.
you're good.
Yep, I've been married for, 3 almost 3 years. 3 years and a couple weeks, so
So you got married at 23. You were a friggin' old maid by the time you got married.
Yes, indeed I was.
In that it's just, and it's amazing to me the reality of what it is for you versus it is what it is for them, and in their world. In your world, you were a 23. In my world, you were a 23-year-old kid who didn't know nothing, and
Right.
when you got married, and but for them it's like, oh no, she should have been married when she was 19. So it's like,
Yeah,
how can you do that?
that expectation is so hard on people too, because I have sessions with people and they're like, "I'm 30, I'm 32, and I'm still not married, and I feel like something's wrong with me." And it's like, "No, if you take a step back from this culture, that's pretty average." You're still getting to know yourself and discovering who you are, and so I just think it's so beautiful, everyone's unique soul's journeys, and none of it's bad or wrong, it just is what it is, and when we can accept that and not bring the shame into anything, I feel like it makes life a whole lot more fun to play in versus feeling like everything is bad and wrong.
Oh, absolutely. I
Yeah.
couldn't agree more, because like I've been divorced for 15 years, and I like to tell people that the last time I was on a date was 1980,
Oh.
and I haven't been on a date since. I don't choose to. It's funny. I would stand at work when I was a driver, and we would
Mhm.
stand together, and people would be talking and stuff, and there were these guys who would say, "Man, I got to work more hours. I'm, and I'm tired. And I said, well, why are you working so much? She said, well, my wife, she wants certain things and I got to provide and certain things. And he said, well, what about your wife? And I said, I don't have one. Really? You get to do what you want all the time? I said, yeah, pretty much. I can do what I want. I spend my own money. Nobody spends my money. I get to. Really? Oh, man. And so at a certain point in time when guys are going, when she was young and beautiful, but now I'd just as soon be single and, stuff. So anyway, it's just,
Perspective is everything.
and perspective is everything. Absolutely. By the way, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, somebody wants to have a reading with you, how do they do that?
Yeah, you can follow me on like Instagram or Facebook. It's Jenn, Jenn, Gilbreth, Gilbreth. But my website is blessedbyangels.org. So you can find all sorts of information there as well.
I'm surprised that was actually even available.
Yeah, it was. I got it a few years ago and I was pretty proud that I could get it.
Oh, that's very cool. And your phone is blowing up at the same time.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm on my husband's laptop right now, and for some reason his messages are connected to the computer, and I don't know how to turn it off or turn the sound down. So I
Nope, you're good.
apologize.
Nope,
I was
you're good.
like just praying, like, Spirit, please don't send too many messages because I don't know how to get it off.
No, you're good. And it provides a little bit of levity and a little bit of light. So,
Well,
Jenn,
thank you so much, Kevin. I just think you're so awesome and what you're doing is amazing, and I'm glad today worked out the way that it did. It happened the way that it did, and I think it was divinely guided.
I couldn't agree more. And I think you are dynamic. You're going to be a wonderful, wonderful resource for people for a very long time.
Thank you.
And you have in your heart the same thing that I do, which is you want to help people.
Yeah.
And your podcast is going to be wildly popular, and I'm going to be on it. I promise.
Yes. We need to make that happen in the next little while. Absolutely.
Yes. Whenever you get that done, I will be happy to come on there and anytime you want to. And you guys, as you know, I'm going to make you guys be monthly on my show.
Yeah, that would be amazing. We'll have to figure out a different time when everything's aligned for another big psychic car wash with all three of us and your input
Exactly.
as well is so needful.
Well, it's kind of fun because I can just sit back and watch you guys work.
Yes, absolutely.
And that is a lot of fun. So, and we're gonna have you on KKNW again and take calls, and it'll be great fun. So,
Well, thank you so much.
Is there anything else you'd like to add before we disappear for today?
No, I just feel like everyone has this divine connection to connect to their ancestors, and you can ask for a message, you can ask for a sign. I mean, this is no coincidence this came about today.
Nope.
And in that same concept, you can ask for a sign if you're doing the right thing or if you're not, and just give yourself permission to know that you are spirit and spirit's connection is you. And I just think it's so important that we remember that we came from positive lineages, positive traits, instead of not always the negative. But I don't know, I just feel like those are really good lessons to integrate in and to take within, and I'm going to do that with myself as well.
You are a treasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You stay right there. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Hey, and thanks for listening to this episode all the way to the end. Hey, pretty cool. Hey, don't forget to follow us so you can receive regular updates and new posts. And remember, take care of each other because each other's all we've got. See you next time on My Independence Report.